By the nurse's station on the 8th floor, a group of family members had already gathered. They had originally been waiting outside the group therapy room for their children to finish class. After hearing the broadcast, they had come to the nurse's station one after another. Some of them were holding their phones. Some had already opened an electronic form. The title of the form read, Supplemental Consent Form for the Sleep Stability Group. The subtitle said, to ensure that the students' follow-up medical referral and psychological support are not interrupted, family members are asked to complete the supplemental confirmation. The moment Lin Yao saw that title, he knew something was wrong. It did not mention correction. It did not mention the White Tower. It only said sleep stability, medical referral, and uninterrupted psychological support. But the more it looked like that, the more dangerous it was. Because the family members would think this was only a normal hospital follow-up document. A father was just about to press agree. Jibai strode forward and pressed down directly on his phone. Don't press that yet. The father was startled. Who are you? Jibai took out his identification badge. Jibai, Director of Emergency Medicine. This consent form has not been formally approved by the hospital. A nurse beside the station turned pale. We didn't issue this form. The family members began to panic. It wasn't sent by the hospital? But it has Mingde's logo on it. I scanned the QR code in the course group chat. The teacher said we had to sign the supplement, or there would be no referral next time. Shen immediately pressed further. Which teacher? The family member pointed toward a woman wearing a White Tower work vest. She was preparing to leave. Field officers stopped her at once. Her face was full of panic. I was only following the process notification. Shen said coldly, who gave you that process? She did not answer. Jibai had already ordered the nurse's station to issue a correction over the broadcast. The supplemental consent notice just announced was not an official notice from the hospital. Family members, please suspend all completion of the form. All medical referrals will not be immediately interrupted because this form has not been completed. As soon as that sentence came out, the family members visibly relaxed. Lin Yao nodded. This was the most important counterprompt in a hospital scenario. It was not to say the form was poisonous. It was not to say that all consent could never be signed. It was to tell the family members clearly that medical referrals would not be immediately interrupted just because the form had not been completed. First, dismantle the fear. Then, examine the content. Jibai projected the supplemental consent form onto a tablet. On the surface, the clauses looked very normal. I agree that the student may participate in sleep stability support. I understand that the course may include audio guidance, breathing exercises, and sleep assessment. I agree that, when necessary, a partner psychological support system may provide stability recommendations. The problem was hidden in the folded clauses. When they opened stability recommendations, the language inside read: Stability recommendations may include synchronous anxiety reassessment, delayed processing of withdrawal thoughts, desensitization of correction fear, and referral to White Tower stability procedures. Further down, there was another line in even smaller text. After family confirmation, this shall be deemed consent for the student to receive priority handling under stability procedures while in an unstable state. Lu Qingxin saw this remotely, and her voice went cold at once. This is not supplemental consent. This is using family consent to override a minor's later refusal. Lin Yao looked at the family members. Many of them did not understand clauses that complicated. They only knew that if they did not sign, their children might lose access to referral. That was precisely what Luo Wentz and the White Tower had seized. Parental fear. The fear that their child would not receive help. The fear that they were not cooperating with the hospital. The fear that they might miss treatment. So even if the clauses hid desensitization of correction fear inside them, they would still press agree. Lin Yao wrote on the nurse's station whiteboard. Medical referral is not correction consent. Family members may consent to medical support, but may not replace the child's right to refuse later. Supplemental consent may not hide folded clauses. After Jibai finished reading it, he said directly to the nurse, "Take a photo. Send it to every family member here." Lin Zhean also arrived at the nurse's station. When he saw the supplemental consent form, his expression changed completely. "This is not the version I approved." Jibai looked at him coldly. "It came from your partner." Lin Zhean's face was ugly. "I will take responsibility." "You'd better." Shen had the field officers restrain the White Tower worker and seal her phone and work tablet. Only then did she finally begin to break down. "I really was only following the back-end push." The back-end said this was a necessary supplement. Xinwan asked, "Where is the back-end?" She trembled as she answered. "The White Tower Medical Cooperation back-end. The login entrance is in the course management system." With Yi Jiwei and Gu Mingxia assisting remotely, they soon entered the management page. There was a progress bar on the page. Family supplemental consent collection, 46%. Target, activate group sleep stability feedback after reaching 60%. Everyone's expression changed. Again, it was a group. After the White Tower had failed with an individual tower heart and a group tower heart, it had turned toward the family consent ratio. As long as 60% of the families pressed agree, it could claim that a group support stability procedure existed. Then it could pressure the remaining children. Most parents had already agreed. "You should cooperate too." This was the hospital version of a group norm. Not a student average. A family consent ratio. Lin Yao immediately added new rules. Majority family consent may not replace individual risk disclosure. Family group consent may not be converted into individual correction pressure. Medical support for minors must preserve the minor's right to express themselves within a comprehensible scope. Lu Qingxin said remotely, "This matches medical ethics." Lin Zhean also nodded. "I agree." Jibai said coldly, "Then shut down that back end." Yi Jiwei operated the disable function. A warning popped up from the system. Disabling family consent collection may cause follow-up services to be interrupted. Jibai said directly, "Services will not be interrupted. Mingde Hospital will take them back." Lin Zhean glanced at him and said through clenched teeth, "The adolescent psychosomatic department will take them back. The White Tower will no longer serve as the follow-up referral party for tonight's course." The system seemed to freeze. Yi Jiwei seized the opportunity and disconnected the White Tower backend. The progress bar stopped at 46. It did not reach 60. The family supplemental consent node was stopped. But at that moment, a mother beside the nurse's station suddenly began to cry. "Then what do I do? I already pressed it just now." Another father also panicked. "I pressed it too. Has it already taken effect?" This problem was extremely realistic. Stopping what came next was not enough. What about the family members who had already pressed agree? If they did not handle that, those families would sink into panic. And the White Tower could still use the already signed consent to continue making a case. Lin Yao said, "Establish a withdrawal window." Lin Zhean immediately asked, "Medical consent can be withdrawn, but what about procedures that have already been completed?" Lu Qingxin answered, "This is not a completed medical procedure.
This is consent for a follow-up support process. It can be withdrawn.
Shen Jibai said to the family members, "If you already pressed it just now, don't panic.
The hospital will now provide paper and electronic records for withdrawing supplemental consent. Withdrawal will not affect your child's necessary medical and psychological support at Mingde tonight." As that sentence landed, the family members visibly settled. Zhean immediately helped set up a withdrawal window. On the whiteboard, they wrote, "Those who have already pressed supplemental consent may withdraw. Withdrawal does not affect necessary medical support." Withdrawal applies only to the White Tower stability process and clauses related to desensitization of correction fear. Normal medical care will not be interrupted. This was the realistic adaptation of the contract withdrawal register in a hospital scenario. It did not withdraw every form of consent. It only withdrew the White Tower process consent that had been bound to folded clauses, undisclosed risks, and qualification threats. Normal medicine remained. The family members began lining up to withdraw. A system prompt surfaced. New medical scenario category added, supplemental consent withdrawal window. Effect, separates medical support from White Tower stability procedures. New rule, withdrawing White Tower clauses does not affect necessary medical care. While the withdrawal window was operating, Shen Jibai's emergency communication device rang again. The nurse's voice was urgent. "Director Shen, a male patient just arrived in the emergency department. He claims to be Lin Zhean." Everyone froze at the same time. Lin Zhean. Lin Zhean's younger brother.
The missing synchronizer rescued from the livestream pod.
He was supposed to be under observation at the safe point. Zhean immediately contacted Su Family Hall. The response came back quickly. Lin Zhean was still resting at the hall. He had not left. Then who was this Lin Zhean who had come to the emergency department?
The nurse continued, "He keeps saying he has to complete medical correction for the real Lin Zhean.
He also brought a family substitute confirmation form." Lin Yao's eyes went cold. Substitute consent. False identity. Medical correction. Luo Wence's third blade had already stabbed into the emergency department.
The newly arrived male patient was placed in a temporary assessment area.
He looked to be in his 20s. He was thin, pale, and holding a document in both hands. His eyes were empty. But he was not completely unconscious. He looked more like someone who had been trained to answer only fixed questions. When the nurse asked his name, he said, "Lin Zhean." When she asked his birthday, he paused for 3 seconds, then gave a string of dates. When she asked why he had come to the hospital, he answered, "To complete medical correction." When she asked whose medical correction, he answered, "Mine." But the subject on the document in his hands was another file. Lin Zhean, follow-up medical correction confirmation after high synchronization disappearance. The document looked as if it had been generated by Mingde Hospital and the White Tower's cooperation system. But Shen Jibai saw at once that it was not an official internal hospital format. Fake. He slapped the document onto the table. But it is a very good fake. Zhean quickly compared the information. The document contained part of Lin Zhean's basic data. It contained a summary of his condition after being rescued from the livestream pod incident. It even contained contact fragments naming Lin Zhean as a family member. The data had clearly leaked. Lin Yao looked at the false Lin Zhean in front of him. This was not merely an imposter. He was more likely a substitute person who had been implanted with fragments of Lin Zhean's data. Or to be more precise, a substitute consent carrier. The real Lin Zhean was at the safe point and would not cooperate with medical correction. So Luo Wentz had sent in a fake Lin Zhean to complete the confirmation for him. This was the advanced version of substitute consent. It was not family signing on someone's behalf. It was identity replacement. Jibai asked, "Do you know your real name?" The man hesitated. Lin Zhean. Lin Yao took out a sheet of paper and wrote. "You do not need to answer Lin Zhean for now." The man's eyes wavered. His lips trembled. But the next second, he seemed to be pulled back again. "I am Lin Zhean." Yi Jiwei whispered, "Identity overwrite." Xinwan asked, "Can we check his real identity?" Shen Shu had the field officers run a comparison. The result came back very quickly. The man was not Lin Zhean. His name was Luo Yuchen. 24 years old. He had once participated in an outsourced psychological assessment for Anshu data. He had been missing for the past 2 weeks. Lin Yao's heart sank. Another person swallowed by the Anshu system. Shen Jibai looked at Luo Yuchen. Luo Yuchen. The man's whole body trembled violently. But he immediately clutched his head in pain. No. I am Lin Zhean." Lin Yao immediately stopped Shen Jibai from continuing to call the real name. "Don't force the true name yet." Shen Jibai frowned. "Didn't you say he isn't Lin Zhean?" "Yes. But his real name may also be a trigger right now." Lin Yao wrote on the paper. "You are not the person on the document. You also do not have to say who you are right away. You can stop first." The man stared hard at the paper. "Do not have to right away." His hands slowly loosened from the document. Xinwan quickly took the document away. The man's breathing became rapid. "The document. I have to complete it." Lin Yao said, "The document can be put down first. The hospital will not use this document to complete correction." Shen Jibai immediately followed. "As director of Mingde Emergency Medicine, I confirm that this document is invalid." The man's entire body seemed to lose connection, and he slumped into the chair. "Invalid? Then I don't have to complete it?" Lin Yao said, "You don't. You do not have to complete anything for Lin Zhean. And you do not have to prove who you are right now." That sentence brought a trace of his own fear into the man's eyes. "Then will I be cleared?" Everyone's heart sank. Cleared. That was not White Tower terminology. It sounded more like an R-series phrase, or one of Luo Wence's early-stage clearance commands. Lin Yao asked, "Who said you would be cleared?" The man trembled. "If substitution fails." "Data recovery." "I don't have a name. I can only be someone else's correction slot." Yi Jiwei's face went pale. Correction slot. This was another new thing. When the real target did not cooperate with correction, they found another person to serve as a correction slot, carrying identity fragments and completing the formal confirmation. That way, the system could display that Lin Zhean had completed some form of medical correction or stability confirmation. The real Lin Zhean did not need to be present, as long as there was a correction slot to run the process for him. This was worse than a forged signature, because it directly used a living person as a field. Lin Yao wrote on the whiteboard. Correction slot. Definition: a controlled or identity overwritten person is used to replace the real subject in completing correction, stability, medical, or qualification confirmation. Hazard: it erases two people. The real subject is falsely consented for, and the correction slot is turned into a tool. Handling: declare the document invalid, stop substitution, first the task, and do not immediately force the true name. A system prompt surfaced. New high-risk medical scenario category, correction slot. Obsidian's 4 principles extended, a human being must not become another person's consent field. Lin Yao looked at that extension, and his heart sank to the bottom. A human being must not become another person's consent field. That sentence almost summarized the new stage of Luo Wence's real-world command network. The dead whitelist turned the dead into qualification fields for the living. The living tower heart turned one person into a group stability field. The correction slot turned Luo Yuchen into Lin Zhean's consent field. Everyone's position was being misused. What Obsidian had to do was pull people out of the wrong fields. Shen Jibai had the nurse perform a basic vital check on Luo Yuchen. This time, he explained first. "We are checking your body." Not confirming Lin Zhean. Luo Yuchen nodded. "My body." That sentence stabilized him a little. He finally began to realize that he had a body of his own, not merely a position in someone else's document. Xinhuan immediately contacted Su Family Hall to confirm the real Lin Zhean's condition. Lin Zhean was still under sleep observation, with no abnormality. But when Lin Jiaying heard that someone had used her younger brother's identity, her emotions fluctuated sharply. Lin Yao asked the safe point to tell her. The real Lin Zhean has not been replaced. The fake document has already been declared invalid by the hospital. That sentence mattered. They could not let the family feel that her brother had been taken away a second time. Back in the emergency department, Chen Shu began tracing Luo Yuchen's route. He had been dropped off at the hospital entrance by a ride-hailing car. After getting out, he had walked into the emergency department on his own. The driver said he had been quiet the entire way, holding only the document. The ride-hailing account was newly registered. The payment method was a prepaid card. The destination had been set as Mingde Emergency Department. Xinhuan found something even more important. Before Luo Yuchen went missing, he had completed an identity stability assessment on the White Tower online platform. The result of that assessment was weak self-boundary. Highly suitable for undertaking stability procedures. May serve as an auxiliary correction slot. When Shen Jibai heard this, he swore outright. Are they treating people as medical consumables? Lin Yao said, worse than consumables. At least consumables are not asked to say they are someone else. Luo Yuchen trembled on the bed. Lin Yao walked to his side and lowered his voice. You are not a correction slot. You are not a document either. For now, you may use a temporary name. Luo Yuchen's eyes were blank. Temporary name. You do not have to remember your real name immediately. And you do not have to continue being Lin Zhean. There can be a place in the middle first. Luo Yuchen was silent for a long time. Finally, he said in a very small voice, blank. Xinhuan froze. You want to be called blank for now? Luo Yuchen nodded. I am, like blank now. Lin Yao did not deny it. Temporary name, blank. The right to recover or change your name in the future is preserved. You do not serve as anyone's correction slot. The metal box glowed faintly. Luo Yuchen, now temporarily named blank, finally let go of the document. The document was placed into an evidence bag. The name Lin Zhean on it gradually faded, revealing a small string of gray text underneath. Substitute slot number, slot 17. Everyone's expression sank at the same time. 17. That meant blank was not the first. There were at least 16 other correction slots. Perhaps even more. Chen Shu looked at Lin Yao. Lin Yao looked back at him. They had originally thought the hospital arc was a battlefield around the White Tower and medical consent. Now, its true black hole had surfaced. The correction slot system.
A system that used living people to replace others in completing consent, correction, and qualification confirmation. If this system had already been operating, many people might have been displayed as consented, corrected, or stabilized without ever knowing it. And the people who bore the process in their place had been erased into blanks. Lin Yao tightened his grip on the metal box. Investigate slot. Start from 17 and trace backward. Chen Shu nodded. Tonight is not ending.
Shen Jibai said coldly, the emergency department never ends. In the distance, the hospital broadcast returned to normal. But everyone knew that beneath the normal sound, too many wrong positions had already been hidden. The dead had been put into the whitelist. Students had been pushed onto the tower heart.
Family members had been pushed into supplemental signing.
Patients had been connected into relays.
Blank had been sent in as a correction slot. And Obsidian's rules had to pull each of them, one by one, back into their own place. This hospital battle had only just begun. After the string slot 17 appeared, no one in the emergency assessment area spoke. It did not sound like a name. It did not sound like a medical record number either. It sounded more like a storage bay. A position used to put a person in.
Luo Yuchen lay on the hospital bed, with the temporary name blank written in the note field on the bedside card.
Shen Jibai insisted on adding one medical note. Temporary name is used only for synchronization risk communication and does not replace medical identity verification. That was his bottom line. The hospital could not abandon real identity verification just because of a temporary name.
But it also could not force a patient to accept his real name immediately when his mental state was extremely unstable.
Therefore, medical identity and synchronization safe naming had to be layered. Lin Yao quickly recorded that note into the medical scenario norms.
Qinwan sat beside the nurse's station, rapidly tracing the source of slot 17. In that fake Lin Zhean document, besides the surface-level medical correction confirmation, there was also a hidden transfer record underneath.
Slot 17. Status, active. Corresponding target, Lin Zhean. Use, follow-up medical correction confirmation after high synchronization disappearance. Carrier, data masked.
Source, White Tower Identity Stability Assessment.
Transfer node, Mingde Emergency Department. Completion conditions, medical side reception, document confirmation, stability process marker.
Chen Shu looked at the underlying record, his expression terrifyingly dark.
What would have happened if Director Shen had accepted that document as valid?
Yi Jiwei answered, in the system, Lin Zhean might have been marked as having completed follow-up medical correction.
Blank would have been marked as having completed the correction slot task. Xinwan added, but Blank himself might not have received any identity restoration. He would only have been used up. Shen Jibai said coldly, and after being used up? No one answered immediately. But the answer was obvious.
A person called a correction slot was neither himself nor the corresponding target.
Once the task was completed, his system value ended.
If secrecy still had to be maintained afterward, he might be overwritten again, transferred, have his memory cleared, or even be sent to the next correction slot task.
Lin Yao looked at Blank. He had already fallen asleep. No sedative had been given. He had simply become naturally exhausted under medical observation and fallen asleep. The bedside card with the word blank written on it was very thin. But at that moment, that card was more important than any medical chart. It proved that he was not slot 17. He was not Lin Zhean. Nor was he a field in a document. He was a person. Even if, for now, he could only be called blank. Lin Yao said, check slot 16 first. Xinwan opened the data chain. The result displayed. Insufficient permission. She searched the slot index again. It was still blocked.
High-level White Tower medical cooperation permission required.
Yi Jiwei tried using the sealed White Tower back-end entrance, but she could only see that some numbers existed.
Slot 01 through slot 24. 17 of them showed once active.
4 were pending activation.
3 had failed. Failed. Those 3 words made the air in the emergency department even colder. Chen Shu asked, "What does failed mean?"
Yi Jiwei's face was very poor.
"I'm not sure. It may mean the task failed.
It may also mean the carrier lost usable status."
Shen Jibai said directly, "Or they died." That sentence was harsh. But everyone knew it could not be excluded.
If the correction slot system had already been operating, the people used to carry others' consent would face an enormous physical and mental load.
Identity overwrite, data traction, medical correction, qualification confirmation, any one of those could collapse a person.
Lin Yao said in a low voice, "We must get the slot list."
Chen Shu asked, "From where?" Gu Mingxia connected remotely, her voice somewhat weak. The White Tower medical cooperation backend may only be the operations side. The real slot list should be in an Anshu cloud node. Or.
She stopped for a moment.
Lin Yao asked, "Or what?" Gu Mingxia said, "Mingde Hospital itself may have a mapping table." Shen Jibai looked at her. "Why would the hospital have one?" "Because the medical side needs to know which correction slot corresponds to which medical event. It might not be in plain text. It might be hidden inside referral codes, assistance codes, or psychological support service codes." Shen Jibai's face became increasingly ugly. Information office. He directly dialed the internal line.
"Pull the service code mapping for every White Tower, Anshu, psychological support, and medical assistance plugin tonight." The person on the other end clearly wanted to push the procedure again at first. Shen Jibai responded with only one sentence.
"I am not consulting you right now.
I am conducting an adverse event investigation." A few minutes later, the information office sent a service code table.
On the surface, they were all normal referral codes. For example, BTSLP-08, Sleep Support Group 8. AXMED-814, Anshu Medical Assistance Pre-Assessment Number 14. BTIDSTB-17, White Tower Identity Stability Number 17. That last line matched slot 17. Xinwan immediately traced backward through the BTIDSTB series. The result showed 24 groups in total. Each group corresponded to a service application.
Some fields were masked. But the Mingde side at least retained reception time, referral source, and corresponding department.
Slot 17 corresponded to emergency medicine. Slot 16 corresponded to adolescent psychosomatic medicine. Slot 15 corresponded to the sleep center.
Slot 14 corresponded to the long-term care ward. Slot 13 corresponded to follow-up data correction after an emergency death notification. When they saw slot 13, everyone stopped.
Follow-up data correction after an emergency death notification.
The dead whitelist and the correction slot had connected inside the hospital. Shen Jibai's voice was so low that it almost could not suppress his anger.
"Who is slot 13? Xinwan searched.
The surface name was masked. But the reception date was 2 weeks ago.
The department was emergency medicine. Status, failed. Completion condition, partially completed." Chen Shu immediately asked, "Where is the failed carrier?" Xinwan continued searching.
"There is no discharge record."
Shen Jibai frowned. "Impossible.
Anyone received by the hospital cannot have no discharge, transfer, death, or departure record."
The information office was ordered to dig deeper again. Soon, an abnormal record was brought up.
The Slot 13 carrier had once been registered as an unnamed male.
After 8 hours of emergency observation, he was transferred to the basement level 2 imaging examination area. After that, he never returned to the emergency system. Basement level 2 imaging examination area. Shen Jibai's expression changed instantly. Basement level 2 does not run routine examinations at night. Chen Shu asked, "Does it have another use?"
Shen Jibai said in a low voice, "Old nuclear medicine area." Later, part of it was shut down, and part was converted into an outsourced equipment storage area.
Outsourced equipment storage. Everyone instantly thought of the basement level 2 of the decommissioned mall. Luo once liked basement level 2 very much. Not because of romance, but because equipment, pipelines, old systems, outsourced storage, and surveillance blind spots were all there. Lin Yao looked at Chen Shu. Chen Shu had already ordered field officers to assemble.
Shen Jibai also called 2 hospital security officers and a nursing supervisor.
Lin Yao reminded him, a medical area cannot become a battlefield. Shen Jibai answered quickly. Then you follow my instructions. If there are patients inside, I check the medical side first. If there is White Tower or Anshu equipment, you move after that. Lin Yao nodded. Agreed.
Before they set out, Xinwan preliminarily organized the slot list into 3 categories.
Active. Pending activation. Failed. Lin Yao added a 4th category. Released.
Luo Yuchen, temporary name blank, was listed as the first released correction slot.
That category had to exist. There could not only be active, pending, and failed. People were not system fields. They could be released. They could be rescued. They could stop being slot. A system prompt surfaced. Slot list prototype formed. New category, released correction slot. Effect, reduces stability of correction slot identity overwrite. Warning, residual record for failed slot 13 exists on basement level 2.
Lin Yao looked at the warning and knew that tonight's true underground core had appeared again.
Mingde Hospital was not only emergency medicine, group therapy, and supplemental consent.
Basement level 2 might hide the physical node of the correction slot system.
And slot 13 might be the first person to reveal it.
The elevator leading to Mingde Hospital's basement level 2 required dual authorization.
Shen Jibai had the first layer of physician authorization.
The nursing supervisor had the second layer of night access authorization. But after both of them swiped their cards, the elevator still did not start.
A line appeared on the screen. This area is under outsourced equipment maintenance. Please use the engineering entrance instead.
Shen Jibai looked at that line, his expression cooling. I have worked in this hospital for 10 years. I did not know emergency physicians were forbidden from entering the old nuclear medicine area.
The nursing supervisor also frowned. This is a new setting.
Chen Shu looked at Lin Yao.
Lin Yao nodded. Outsourced equipment maintenance. Again, a familiar disguise.
The decommissioned mall's basement level 2 had also been equipment maintenance.
Anshu Tower was data service. The White Tower was psychological support. Mingde's basement level 2 was outsourced equipment storage. Every layer was legal. Every layer looked reasonable.
Chen Shu had the field officers enter through the engineering entrance.
Shen Jibai insisted on following. If there are patients inside, you won't understand.
Lin Yao did not object.
He did not dare object either. Basement level 2 was not Obsidian Town.
It was not a place any field team could solve by force alone.
The engineering entrance was behind the inpatient building. At night, almost no one was there. A sign hung on the door. Equipment maintenance. Unauthorized personnel prohibited. When Shen saw the sign, he gave a cold laugh. Do they only know this one trick? Lin Zhean said, because it works. In reality, many people would automatically stop when they saw those words. That was the power of procedural language. Security opened the engineering door. The group followed a narrow passage downward. The air on basement level 2 was colder than the emergency department. The walls still bore old yellow warning labels from the nuclear medicine area, though most had already been covered. New cables extended along the walls. Some cables connected into the hospital network cabinet. Others led toward a room marked temporary storage for outsourced sleep equipment. Jibai looked at the equipment and said in a low voice, "This is not ordinary sleep equipment." Jibai asked, "What is it?" "Low-frequency audio source distributor and physiological signal synchronization collectors." Jibai's face went black. Who approved connecting this to the hospital network? The nursing supervisor's face was just as ugly. This wasn't requested by the nursing department. Shen said, "Seal the equipment first." Jibai immediately warned them, "Don't cut it directly. If it is linked to patient monitoring data currently in use, a hard cut may cause data loss." Jibai followed, "Isolate external transmission first. Preserve internal medical monitoring." This was the hospital version of a blockade. Not smashing machines. Not pulling cables. But separating external transmission from the medical core. The field officers coordinated with the information office remotely and began isolating the connection. At that moment, a very soft sound came from deeper in the hallway. It sounded like someone crying. It also sounded like someone murmuring numbers. Jibai immediately walked toward the sound. Shen stopped him for a moment. "It may be a trap." Jibai said coldly, "It may also be a patient." That sentence made Shen let go. In a hospital, you could not refuse rescue just because something might be a trap. But you also could not go in unprotected. Field officers guarded the front and back. The sound came from the old nuclear medicine scanning room. The door was half open. The lead plate marking on the door was still there. There was no active nuclear medicine equipment inside. In its place were several temporary hospital beds. Beside each bed stood a small monitor. 3 people lay on the beds. A middle-aged woman. A young man. A teenage boy. None of them were restrained. But sensor patches were attached to their wrists, and small patches bearing the White Tower logo were attached to their foreheads. The screen on the wall displayed Slot Observation Group. Slot 09, Stabilizing. Slot 13, Residual After Failure. Slot 21, Pending Activation. Jibai strode forward and checked the 3 people's vital signs first. All alive. Which one is slot 13? Jibai looked at the screen. Slot 13 corresponded to the middle-aged woman. Her eyes were open, but she was repeating only one sentence. Death does not affect qualification. Death does not affect qualification. Lin Yao's heart sank. Slot 13 had not died. After failure, she had been left behind as a residual carrier of the dead whitelist phrase. She might have been used for follow-up data correction after an emergency death notification. What she carried was the logic of the dead whitelist. That was why she kept repeating, "Death does not affect qualification." Jibai suppressed his anger and said to the nursing supervisor, "Prepare transfer. These 3 people cannot stay here." Jibai said urgently, "Don't move the sensor patches yet." They may be connected to the system. Lin Yao walked to slot 13's bedside. The middle-aged woman did not look at him. She only kept repeating. Death does not affect qualification. Death does not affect qualification. Lin Yao took out a piece of paper and wrote. Death does not equal consent. The woman's voice paused for an instant. He wrote again. You do not have to maintain qualification for the dead. A tear slid from the corner of the woman's eye. But she still continued to recite. Death does not affect. Shen Jibai asked, Can we give medication? Lin Yao looked at him. This time, he did not rush to reject it. Is it medically necessary? She has been repeating phrases for too long. Her heart rate is elevated. There is a risk of dehydration. She needs rest. Lin Yao nodded. Yes. But explain first. Shen Jibai walked to the woman's side. I am Dr. Shen Jibai. I am giving you medication now to let your body rest. This is not to make you complete any qualification. It is not correction. It is not confirmation. The woman's gaze moved faintly. Not qualification. Not qualification. After the medication was given, her repeated phrase gradually slowed. Yi Jiwei used the chance to isolate the external transmission connected to the sensor patches on her body. A screen warning popped up. Slot 13 residual interrupted. Dead whitelist feedback insufficient. Please activate backup slot. Lin Yao looked toward the other two beds. Slot 09 was the young man. His status displayed stabilizing. But the corners of his mouth held a strange smile. He murmured, I can replace him. I can replace him. As long as I replace him, he won't hurt. Slot 21 was the teenage boy. He had not yet been activated. But the white tower patch on his forehead was blinking. The screen prompted. Pending subject compatibility, high. May carry adolescent psychosomatic department supplemental consent gap. Chen Shu's face turned iron blue. They were preparing to use this child to fill the consent gap from the families on the 8th floor. After the White Tower and Anshu system failed to collect family consent on the 8th floor, they were actually preparing to use slot 21 as a substitute carrier. In other words, if the family did not agree, they would find a correction slot to carry the gap in group consent. This had already gone far beyond simple violation. They were using human beings as patches for holes in procedure. Lin Yao tightened his grip on the metal box. A system prompt surfaced. Underground correction slot node confirmed. Slot system function fills target consent, qualification, stability, death feedback, and group gaps. High-risk determination, human beings are being used as process patches. Process patches. Those 4 words were colder than correction slot. A person was no longer a person. Only a patch for a missing part of a process. Lin Yao looked at the 3 beds, his voice low. Add all of them to discovered slot. Slot 13, residual carrier of the dead whitelist. Slot 09, substitute carrier of pain. Slot 21, pending activation for a group consent gap. First the external task, then medically transfer them out. Shen Jibai nodded. I handle the medical side. Chen Shu said, I control the scene. Yi Jiwei said, I cut external transmission. Lin Yao looked at the metal box. I pull them out of the fields. Just as everyone began to move, the screens on basement level 2 suddenly lit up. Luo Wence's image appeared. He looked at Lin Yao, his expression still calm. The hospital is hard, isn't it? Lin Yao looked at him coldly. Luo Wence smiled. You cannot smash. You cannot cut. You cannot stop. You cannot let patients die. You cannot let families panic. You cannot let doctors lose judgment. So you can only dismantle it line by line.
His tone sounded almost approving.
Good.
The more finely you dismantle, the more valuable the data becomes. Chen Shu raised his gun and aimed at the screen.
But Lin Yao raised a hand to stop him. Don't shoot.
Chen Shu looked at him.
Lin Yao said, "This is a hospital. Fragments may hurt people, and they may trigger the equipment." Luo Wen's smile deepened.
You learn very quickly.
Lin Yao looked at him. So do you. But you forgot one thing. Luo Wen asked, "What?"
Lin Yao looked at Jibai, Chen Shu, Yi Jiwei, Xin Wan, and the nursing supervisor.
This is not my territory.
So it is not a place you can control through a single line either.
Doctors have medical boundaries. Field officers have field responsibility. Nursing has nursing procedures. Data has data preservation. Safe naming only fills the gap. He looked back at Luo Wen.
You use people as process patches. We dismantled the process back to the position of the person. For the first time, Luo Wen was silent for a moment on the screen. Then he said, "Then let us see whether you can dismantle slot 00.
The image disappeared.
Every screen on basement level 2 displayed the same line at once.
Slot 00, core correction slot. Status, active. Location, inside Mingde Hospital's main system. Everyone's expression changed sharply.
Slot 00 was not inside this scanning room.
It was not on one of the beds. It was inside Mingde Hospital's main system. Core correction slot.
That meant that somewhere inside the entire hospital system, there might be a person, or a personified set of data, bearing the core confirmation for every correction process in the hospital.
Lin Yao looked at that line and knew the true core of the hospital arc had finally appeared. Slot 00. Only by dismantling it could Mingde Hospital's node truly be stopped.